everybody, and welcome to the third roundtable at the Rise World Summit. And we're really excited to have World Benchmarking Alliance as our partner for this roundtable. And with me is Aparna Trichur, who is the communication lead for World Benchmarking Alliance, and she's based out of Amsterdam. And to get us started and to set the context for this roundtable, Aparna, may I ask you to please take it ahead?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're signing in from today. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be able to co-host this session with Karen from iDopro and Ally. My name is Aparna Chichur and I work for the World Benchmarking Alliance, currently based out of Amsterdam. At WBA, I lead communications towards our alliance, a community of almost 200 global organizations that have come together to build a movement towards the SDGs. To those of you who might not necessarily be familiar with what WBA does, I'd like to take a moment to briefly tell you about our work and mission. 4 years ago, Aviva Index Initiative, the UN Foundation, and the Business and Sustainable Development Commission were brought together by a common belief that the private sector can strongly contribute to, as well as benefit from, the global ambition of the SDGs, and that corporate performance benchmarks are very powerful levers for change. Each of them saw that SDG-centered benchmarks were a missing piece of the puzzle, and the WBA was basically launched to fill that gap officially at the sidelines of the 73rd UN General Assembly in 2018. Our mission is supported by funding partners like the Dutch, Danish, UK, Swedish, German government, and several other global foundations. As a not for profit organization, we're really seeking to generate a movement around increasing the private sector's impact towards a sustainable future for all. Our benchmarks measure the performance of companies on the global challenges the world faces and creates an accountability mechanism and inspires corporate leadership. The benchmarks are set to empower all stakeholders from government, civil society, consumers, and investors to employees and business leaders with key data and insight to encourage sustainable business. For this, we launched the SDG 2000, a list of the world's 2,000 most influential companies from Algeria to Vietnam that have the power to shape our collective future. Between them, these 2,000 companies employ 102 million people globally, cross 80 countries, and hold around $46 trillion in revenue. In the coming years, through the process of benchmarking at WBA, we hope to basically inspire a race to the top in which corporate leaders are motivated to do more and laggards are held to account. This information is basically free and available for everyone. Currently, these 2,000 companies are benchmarked on SDG areas like gender, human rights, decarbonization, food and agriculture, digital inclusion, and finance. One of the most important things that I want to tell you in context of today's conversation is that when WBA launched, we really strongly believed in the power of partnerships, and that's basically when we formed the alliance. Echoing the spirit of SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals, our multi-stakeholder alliance plays a significant role in helping WBA become a truly effective global organization. From 66 organizations when we launched, our alliance stands at 194 global organizations as of today, and this mix includes across stakeholder groups like academic and research institutions, benchmarks, reporting platforms, business and industry platforms, financial institutions, government agencies, multilateral bodies, NGOs, and civil society organizations. Basically, WBA allies help us ensure that our consultations and benchmarks are used by companies, investors, policymakers, and civil society, and help us transform our work to create pools of impact. Through their existing connections and engagement with WBA, our allies have the potential to shape what this community looks like tomorrow and basically enable change in business behavior all across the globe. As we grow, we ask ourselves some very, very critical questions, and this basically forms the basis of what Karen and I would love to explore with this group today. Karen, if you may allow me, I'd like to kick off this discussion by asking our audience, what does effective collaboration across geographical divides mean? I'd love to learn from some best practices and hear from different organizations present at the table today on what their experiences are like.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the heart of the Rise World Summit collaboration. And so, definitely understanding it from our participants' perspective is really, really important. So, thank you, Aparna. Yes, please go for it.
Yeah. I'd love to draw on anyone in the audience who would like to speak up to how partnerships have helped them achieve their
So,
goals.
Aparna, maybe what we can do to get started is, let them put that down as the key
Sure.
thought, because some may have a different perspective, some may get inspired
Absolutely.
by that. So maybe that could be the way to get started on the chat. And also
Brilliant.
one more thing maybe we could do before we really get deep dive into the conversation is to ask everybody to rename themselves. Those of you been with me since morning know the drill already, but those of you who don't, so I'm going to start with doing it for myself. Okay, so your name, your city, and then okay, that happens. That we know that too. So fair enough. So if you can just rename yourself and put down, as I said, your name, your city, because we have a very global audience, and we at this count is 43 countries. So put your city, and then finally your organizations names. Yeah, that will help us to also bring you in, and also to identify where are you from, and hopefully get a very diverse set of voices that we can bring into the room, because that's the beauty of a conference or a summit in a platform like this. So great. Yeah, so to go to the point that you brought up, Aparna, what does collaboration mean for you? So great, let's start with that. And if we can have a few answers on the chat box, please. I hope you are not all sleepy and tired. Maybe we should do a quick, what do you call it, energizer. Should we do that?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So,
Also, just to reiterate, maybe we don't intend to see this as a panel discussion where one set of speakers are going to be speaking the whole time. We really want to make this an interactive discussion, very in line with how the RISE Summit is. So we really welcome all your views.
yeah, and to kind of reiterate that, I think as you know, those of you been with us, we have no panels and no presentations. So I mean, it's a non-hierarchical setup, and everybody here are equally involved and equally what should I say, committed to this whole sustainability and the SDG goal. So there is no kind of us and then you. So yes, we are all in the conversation together, and unless we all get into the conversation, we're not going to have a conversation. So I'm looking forward to some of the answers. And here's Janvi Samal. I'm from India and I'm studying master of social. Thank you very much. Bringing diverse and niche strengths which complement and synergize for end results. Absolutely, yes. So collaboration for me is working together. The very, very simple and straight answer. There is no two ways about that. It's the starting point of every single thing we talk around collaboration, coming together and working together. Collaboration is a process which each partner gives more than he or she receives and more than he or she has given. Give and take is part of every relationship. And I think, yeah, I mean, we may not measure it, but definitely give and take is a necessary part of every relationship. Great. Any more other points that we can maybe pick up on before we move on to
Maybe having the same goal that unites us in its collaboration.
absolutely
Absolutely.
having a common purpose, a single point of looking forward. Yes, goals and objectives. Very good.
If I just may add a deal breaker there, I remember at one of our sessions, one of our allies said that it is important to not just work with people who have the same opinion as you, but also work with people who have a different opinion so that you can really reach a common goal. So maybe would one of the participants who inputted into the chat like to speak up?
Sure. Time for us to do a icebreaker. So I'm going to ask everybody to please do put on your videos. Okay, put on your videos. I know, the problem. What is the problem, Aparna? Everybody's so used to webinars and so used to panel discussions. They're used to just having their screens on and not even have their screen on. Okay, they just literally put it on what you call it mute and put the video off, and the computer's just on, right? So nobody really is listening in. So they're very uncomfortable to see, oh, I have to actually talk now and I have to actually be a part of this conversation. So great to see that as well, reaction. So yeah, still a lot of videos off. Are you here with us? Are you here with us? Come on, I want to see some reactions. Are you here with us? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Thumbs up. Good, good. Some more, some more. Still too many videos off. Too many videos off.
I wish all of us had your energy, Karen.
I've been on this since morning, mind you. Yeah? So great. Okay, okay. I'm not going to push too much because we definitely don't want to put people at a spot. But thank you to everyone who did turn on your videos. Okay. And now I would want you all to also please say something. So let's start. Let's turn this around. Like, so we have already put down some of our thoughts in terms of collaboration down. But to get to collaboration is not that simple. And, and to also have a common purpose is not so simple. So how do you reach that point? How do you get to a point of collaboration? How do you get to a point of having a common purpose or identifying that you have a common purpose and a common goal, right? I think it starts from identifying your challenges, and that is really the way we start our roundtables at the Rise World Summit. Is understand what are your challenges in your own, not in this theoretical 30 feet conversation, in your own work, in your own enterprises, in your own organizations. Yeah, what are some of the kind of challenges that you might be facing that you would like to maybe start talking about? Because when you start talking about your challenges, it allows you to vocalize and clarify in your own mind before you talk, because that's what happens. And two is you're giving an opportunity to people to respond back to you in terms of maybe a solution. So Beros, I can see your hand up. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, so I thought maybe we can start with I thought I want to put on the table my favorite example of collaboration, which has really been very, very inspiring for me. And that's the collaboration which the cement industry did and is into, because and the end goal was that although we will be competitors in the market, we will share our good practices and we will come together to bring down our carbon footprint and make our cement as clean as possible. For I mean, I'm sure everybody would know this is one of the most polluting industries of all, one of the worst industries in terms of pollution. So, and the advantage of that today, within a few, so there is a sustainable cement organization or association which they have created, and the best people, I mean, the world leaders have been part of it, including some small companies as well. And the way they have shared their best practices, and at the same time been very clear that they are still compared, that they would kind of go hammer and tongs in the industry, in the marketplace. And they were not any, like no friends in the marketplace, but they would still, for the better good or the greater good of the industry, they would come forward and collaborate. And I thought this was one of the very sort of unique way of looking at things, that be very clear about your, you don't have to be giving in where your profitability or something is concerned, because that is what all corporates are for. But at the same time, do something for the larger, greater good of your own industry, and then thereby also the greater good of the community and the world at large. So I thought maybe this could be one of the, and it's really been my favorite example all along on collaboration. So
Karen, I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Veros, for sharing that. I think definitely giving positive examples of collaborations and this is also very, very important. But what I would like to say, and thank you, Jindra, for highlighting this, that we are here to talk about benchmarks because we are finally partnering with the World Benchmarking Alliance, and we definitely want to know that. So, are there anybody in the room who have actually used benchmarks or has done some kind of work with indicators, measurements of any kind? Because we do have two kinds of roundtables today, the one with World Benchmarking Alliance on benchmarks, but we also have one with the community of evaluators tomorrow morning which is going to be on monitoring and evaluation. And they're two very, very different things. So understanding benchmark indicators and then impact indicators is completely different from the way we would look at measurement of performance and results and activities. So great. Can I just get maybe a quick poll in that sense, that how many over here have actually worked with either, it could be targets and you can write the targets, it can be benchmarks, or it could be I'm sorry, impact assessment frameworks. Can I just see a little bit so I get a sense of what is there in the room? Yeah, that it's in the chat box would be nice if anybody has worked with targets. Great, thanks Njeri, that's really great. Yeah, Dipali, if you could mention what you have worked with would be really helpful.
If I understand what you're saying, that I just want to give you an experience as to what we are doing. So if that fits in.
No, no. May I please request? We are focusing on challenges. So we will come to we have three parts to the conversation: challenges, capabilities, and then collaboration. So when we talk of capabilities, you can definitely bring in what you're doing. At this point, I would really request if you could let us know any challenge that you are facing. Yeah. Or right now, as the question that I've put us, are you already working with targets, with benchmarks, with indicators? Then if you could let us know, that would be very, very helpful. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Can I say something?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the challenges I would state that, say for example, from the sustainability point of view, if we are working with making the plastic more biodegradable. Now the challenge in that part would be to make people aware as to what do they expect when, say, there is a benchmark of, say, the biodegradability needs to go to 60% or 50%, but then in order to get there, that to attain that benchmark, there has to be an awareness as to how much attainable it is. So that kind of a challenge that we face, where the receiving the manufacturers do not know what to expect when they just say biodegradable, just biodegradable, or how much biodegradable. Am I making sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a challenge. Yeah.
Sure. So understanding what you mean also by, whether you've achieved the target or not achieved, what does it really mean, right? That in itself is the starting point of your challenge. Great. Yes, Dr. Shimi Mishra, yeah, would you like to share about your challenges?
Karen. Yeah, I'll do that. Karen, thank you very much for, first of all, anchoring this particular workshop. I think this is beautiful, and so many different participants. So, very good evening, afternoon to all of you, and a very good morning to a few others as well. So, I have been working for the last, I would say, not a very long time, 2.5 years, on collecting, SDG challenges on the ground. Now, in India, we have a very unique problem as compared to other countries. Our, Niti Aayog as an organization is a think tank which actually kind of, publishes and is aligned totally to how every state, every district, every aspirational district is performing, and they do benchmarking as compared to the world standards. Now, when it comes to the kind of projects that they are working with, it's largely government-based data. We really have no clue as to what is happening on. If I say if I step out into my neighborhood, what's the kind of like SDG gap that I have over there, or which SDGs are really a challenge in my particular neighborhood. I have no idea at all. So currently, I'm kind of, like working in two different locations, which is Delhi and Mumbai. We're trying to kind of, map more than 600 communities that are there in these two cities. These are, primarily urban and peri-urban areas that we are covering. And all we are trying to do is also, indicators that are aligned. Now, our data is very fragmented, but we're also in touch with Socio. I don't know how many of you use that particular tool. And we're trying to kind of, get to it to do data analysis so that it can give us some kind of a heat map. to say that, in Delhi, maybe there's, South Delhi, there are these, like 4 different places that are there. Over here, maybe SDG 4, 8, 11, and 17 or 16 is a problem. And if it is a problem, how grave is that problem? How big is the gap? That's what we are trying to get. It's still very, very nascent. And over here, we are working with an organization which does a lot of SDG mapping in their localities and in their country in the US. So this is a collaborative effort that we are trying to do, and let's see where it takes us. So the challenge that I wanted to highlight once again is the fact that all the data that we have today, which is published by Niti Aayog, is mostly governmental in nature. There is no data that is based on real data which is across the country. So we do have fragments here and there lying, but to align it, it's going to be a massive task.
Yes, I think data is very definitely a huge challenge when we want to both collect, process, and compare. I think all the three becomes a big challenge, and I think that's something which Aparna, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the benchmarks that we have from WBA and how they are helping, how they're helping to kind of address some of the challenges that are there. Would you like to maybe take that a little?
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen. And wonderful, Simi, to hear about what the work that you're doing. And I absolutely understand what you mean. Getting that local on ground data and information is super critical at a higher level. When it comes to how WBA does its benchmarks, so we actually, this is something where we critically depend on our alliance, because our alliance are communities and organizations that are present across the world, and they are the ones that have the absolute local expertise and also access to these communities. So, and also, I think one of the ways where WBA ensures the whole neutrality of data is we depend all our consultations and the way we gather our data is really a multi-stakeholder exercise. Even when we were launched, every time we have a consultation, it's always having the multi-stakeholder voice. So we don't necessarily only have the government voice in there, but we encourage voices from civil society, from government, from think tanks, from research institutions, so that we kind of get the overall picture. And I think in a lot of in a lot of cases, when it comes to data, it's very, very important to kind of have that kind of multi-stakeholder setting, so that the voices are not of one community or one group, but truly inclusive and truly representative. So thank you for sharing your insights. That was very helpful to know as well.
Yeah, thanks,
Aparna. That was really very nice to understand that you are kind of, working on this. And I will touch base with you to understand a little more closely.
That would be lovely, Sima.
So yeah, I mean, we've been hearing some of the things on the chat, but again, I would ask if anybody would like to specifically talk about challenges that you have, and this can be from a sectoral point of view, or it can be from an operational point of view, or it could be from a stakeholder engagement ecosystem point of view. So I think there are multiple challenges we face when we want to utilize, benchmarks effectively in our work, and how do we kind of then translate it into something that is easy but meaningful, at the same time. So
Karen, if you allow me, I would like to, throw a specific problem that we are grappling with in social sector. And I'll bring in, social sector here, because when you're looking at solving societal problems, benchmarking in social context becomes, all the more fuzzy. So we are working in Rajasthan, and Rajasthan has an accentuated problem of early girl-child marriage and early childbirth. Now, if we look at this one problem, which is leading to multiple repercussions in terms of low women participation in the workforce, they're not getting empowered, and all kinds of things. So it goes into a spiral path. Now, we are working on a focused project in terms of reaching out in 6 districts of Rajasthan, which have this highest number of girl-child marriages, and looking at how we can create an impact there on adolescent girls. So we try to zero down on girls who are 15 to 21 years of age. We are looking at not urban but rural population here, because that is where we feel the problem is more accentuated. Now, in this rural population, as we are reaching out, we are finding that girls, particularly from deprived community, education for their families and particularly for girls is the least priority. So, it stops, and there's a slip on that. The moment, the school in the village is only to a particular level and the next school is in the next village or, a bit distant. That situation is improving, but not in all the villages. Right? Now, as we are going about it and trying to create this ecosystem of importance of education, we have community motivators, district coordinators, trying to run it like a project. It's very difficult to find, benchmarks, because such examples don't exist in a government ecosystem, in terms of things. And we are trying to look at it as an impact project in terms of tangible outputs, because we are a funded organization. It's a funded project. We are funded by SIF UK, which is one of the largest philanthropies in the world. So it is absolutely target driven. We need to, have gating targets of, girls who have been impacted in terms of being put back into schools, or out of school girls who have been connected to the skill development or livelihoods and jobs. That is the tool that we are looking at in terms of reaching.
Right. Right.
Now, the problem that comes is, which I'm throwing to the panel, is it involves multiple stakeholders. I'm dependent upon state authorities, I'm depending upon CSR foundations who are doing the interventions. I'm depending upon the mindset and the behavioral change and, the patriarchal kind of setup that I'm dealing with in terms of a legacy, particularly in rural Rajasthan. So there are, the problems are multifaceted. For, creating that impact, how do I get a priority in terms of which are the problems to be sought out first and impacted to achieve that output?
Thank you.
So we have tried to develop metrics and some indicators. Not sure if, they're absolutely right. That is something that we have thought through and done with our funder. But if there's some benchmarks on such social projects, happy to understand that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think, Aparna, the feedback we're getting from the conversation, in terms of the challenge ultimately is about using that benchmark information and data, on the ground, where it translates not just as a figure that, somebody can kind of use to as part of PR, but go beyond that. And I think that's a subject which Mr. Kumar is very passionately involved with and is one of our big experts, okay, on thresholds. And so I'm going to request you, yes, Mr. Kumar, please do come in and do share with us your thoughts on this, please.
When we talk about benchmarks and when we talk about sustainable development goals, no goal is achievable if we don't have a benchmark, if we don't have a threshold. We need, as far as programs are concerned, on social indicators, we need to have a minimum threshold. And on environmental indicators, we need to have a maximum threshold. In terms of, let's say, water exploitation, in terms of greenhouse gas emission, you have a maximum threshold. You cannot exceed a number as a global entity. The world itself cannot afford to put out more than so many tons of carbon in a year. That is a threshold which exists. We know about it, science has backed this, yet we find that most of our time and energy is spent on slicing this pie, so to speak, in a manner in which it suits me the best. So we need to, along with thresholds or benchmarks, we also need to talk about allocations. You cannot have a threshold without an allocation. This is on the environmental aspect. On the social aspect, I would like to mention couple of things about what Puneet was just saying about the situation in Rajasthan. Our engagement, whether we are a CSR organization or whether we are as a corporate which is going in, or whether we are as a government or an NGO or whoever is engaging with these communities. Uh, the first step would be to understand from these communities. I'm sure there must be mapping, definitely, but why are these programs failing? I mean, if the child is dropping out of school, or if the child is getting married off at an early age, why is that happening? If we realize either that it could be because of societal, these circumstances in society where there is a threat to the emotional well-being or the physical well-being of the girl child, then that's a social problem which we need to address. Just by talking to the parents, we're not going to be able to solve it. We need to change the mindset of society if our girl children have to be made secure. If they are dropping out of high school because of economic reasons, then we need to address that a little differently. So you need to ensure that a certain basic minimum indicator in terms of family income is provided to these families. The NGOs or the government agencies will have to work on that threshold to ensure that the family as a unit does not drop below that threshold for a sustainable living. Once that is done, I'm quite sure, depending on what the circumstances are, the specific instances for why these dropouts are happening, why these programs are failing, we need to sit down and analyze them and then realize what are the appropriate benchmarks that we need to apply? What are the thresholds that we need to exceed? If it's in terms of providing security, then there has to be a certain minimum, non-negotiable threshold of security which has to be established by the state government. If it's on an income level, then a certain sustenance level or certain minimum level of income has to be provided, which will ensure that the program does not fail.
Right, right.
So this is the importance of thresholds. This is the importance of benchmarks. You make your own benchmark. I mean, it's not, you cannot have a, let's say, for example, you cannot have a global threshold for a minimum income because that's context based. But do you have but you can definitely have a minimum threshold for quality of life.
Right.
So does your threshold ensure quality of life? I mean, I mean, I'm not an economist. Economists can plan, I mean, put this together in a multitude of ways. You can talk about purchasing power parity. You can talk about various other parameters which exist. But are you even measuring up to that threshold?
Right.
I mean, I can just one more point, Karen, before I stop. I mean, you look at a country like India. We have people in India who are among the richest in the world. And we have almost 25-30% of the Indian population is in extreme poverty. You can look at what kind of a median in terms of income, what kind of a distribution of income we have in this country. Are we looking at flattening that curve? I don't see a single program which talks about flattening this curve. That is what is needed. If the minute you can start doing it, and I'm not saying government has to do this. It's not a government issue. If you depend on government to do everything, nothing will happen. As a responsible corporate, the corporates have to do this both through their in-house training of their employees and through their CSR programs, which they are mandated to do in the community around them.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And I think you kind of brought it together to say that it is not just, I mean, societal issues, be there, and environmental issues. It is not just about the community. It is also about the corporates who are involved with it, whether it's directly through their business or then through the CSR. Because I think when we look at the benchmarks, Aparna, I think it's more from looking at an overarching both business and community perspectives. So maybe you want to talk about one or two of the benchmarks to kind of show how that works, Aparna? Yeah.
Sure. Just to maybe address Mr. Pandey's response before this, where he gave us the example of a project in Rajasthan. So one of our benchmarks, the gender benchmark, the way we collect data is we have an ally in India, an organization called the Good Business Lab, which I'm sure many of you might be familiar with, but they are a research organization that works on creating impact in the sector priority from a point of gender. So to establish our benchmark for gender, we rely on Good Business Lab. We actually have an existing partnership with them where they collect the on-ground perspectives from women who are impacted in different communities in India and feed that data into our benchmark. So this is something that this is a kind of partnership that we try to practice across all of our different benchmarks. So getting in that local inputs and perspectives is super important for us at WBA. And to address Mr. Kumar's point, I think what I took away from it is something that we're working on recently, actually, the whole principle of leaving no one behind, which is especially exacerbated now with the COVID crisis. I really strongly feel that people and the social system should be at the middle of every single transformation that we need. If we don't look at the impact that communities and that people have, our work at the end of the day is not going to create the biggest impact that we want. So I think right now, to all our work, the whole principle of just transition or the whole principle of leaving no one behind is super critical. So Karen, to that, I would love to hear some perspectives maybe from corporations who are present today on how they see this.
Matt, I think I have you, another one of our experts from the summit over here in this roundtable. Could I have maybe your insights into, and because you're from Earth Project, which looks at it from a sustainability point of view, maybe some insights from the use of benchmarks?
Well, it's a very good question. It's we're very much accelerating the different programs. I'm sorry, there's some noise in the background. My daughter's being homeschooled.
No problem.
So we're currently working on projects that are to do with compensating for the environmental impact of other organizations who have to do certain things, and we're then proposing sort of holistic environmental programs to try and compensate for that in a timely fashion, not just the carbon footprint, but also other impacts like pollution and also from the perspective of if you can't fully remove the impact that you create, you can potentially set up a program where you do more good than bad as a net effect, and that should ideally be accountable every year, so it's not something you postpone to the future.
Right.
So that's currently on our very high on our minds.
Right. So I think you brought a very good point. We use the word impact quite loosely. I said we use the word impact, quite loosely, and more often than not, we implicitly tend to feel it's about good impact. But the reality is we also have negative impact, you know, just like you have intended impact and then you have unintended impact, right? So I think very often we don't realize the unintended impact of our projects, and B, also the negative part. And this could be a community project or it could be a commercial project. And, so especially a project like the Earth Project, which is just getting started and kind of, helping organizations do this trade-off or at least try to even out, their good and bad impacts. I think it's really important to understand then how is it that you really will say that, yes, I have a kind of balanced it out, because without measurement, that would be pretty much impossible, isn't it, Matt?
Yes, you got to try and measure what you can. I should say we started out as a project which was setting up a physical centre in a village in a very beautiful region of Wales in the UK. And before anything got firmed up, we engaged with the local community, held several public events, fly at the village and so on, to make sure that people felt comfortable, they knew what was going on. and also to gauge. I mean, was there local support? And there was some apprehension because other projects have been proposed before, but eventually the guns were lowered, the virtual guns were lowered, and there was huge support actually, but there was of course still some impacts that would have to be dealt with. And then COVID came around, and we became the Earth Project, and we became much more about augmenting other people's projects because it's very hard to get something started in the UK at the moment with all the restrictions around movement. So we're currently serving as an amplifier, and I'll put our website in the chat so that we're very keen to showcase global projects that are doing good, preferably more good than bad,
Right.
whether unintended or intended, of course.
Right. Thank you so much. Yes, of course, that definitely tells us how we can look at it from the environmental perspective of using benchmarks. So great, thank you. So I think Dr. Dipali, you were talking earlier, and I mentioned to you that when we get into the capability section of the conversation, we definitely like to hear more about your work. I hope she's here, right?
Yes, yes, I'm very much here.
Okay, so why don't you now this would be really a good time for us to hear a little bit more in terms of what you are doing and how you are kind of using it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I am so very, I feel fortunate and happy to be part of this very esteemed gathering, because what we are doing is a very small part of what you all are, the projects are, I mean, they're fantastic. And what we are doing is at a very small scale of plastic waste.
Everything matters. There's no such thing as small. There is no such thing as small because every single thing matters, right? We know that
Yeah.
already, yeah. Because the
Thank you.
reverse of it is also true. Every negative action also adds up to really become drastic for the world, right? So no positive action is ever small. Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, so currently what we are doing is that there is as a lab, there are benchmarks put up for as to how much plastic should be how much of plastic, biodegradable plastic should be measured. So the benchmark that we are working with is with a scientific test method, which says that this is the benchmark you should attend if you are calling your product to be biodegradable plastic, or if the manufacturer is calling it to be a biodegradable plastic. So in that case, what we do is that we are actually a testing lab which measures as to when and we are the third party. So they have government labs and we have third party lab where we can measure as to how much, when they're saying, okay, this is my product is biodegradable, we are actually using these test method benchmarks to second their claim that whether they are biodegradable or non-biodegradable. Now there is here, as I said, the challenge is the actual terminology of biodegradable to India is very loose. We are very organic, biodegradable, and composting. All of it is considered to be the same, which is not. So that is the challenge that we have, that we have to first make the manufacturer aware as to what test method or what benchmark they should choose. So we are working on that right now, and we are providing them scientific proof of it. So that is our capability.
Great, great. Thanks so much, Dr. Vipari, for sharing that with us. Definitely does help. So, Jindra, I do see you've been very active on the chat, and thank you so very much for that, because we definitely need as many comments and inputs as possible. Would you like to say a few words, perhaps, and let us know a little of your work and what you're doing?
Hello, I'm calling in from Prague. I think benchmarking is vital. Accountability for meeting those benchmarks or not is even more important. A collaborative focus. If we just picked one SDG and we all put all of our public, private, nonprofit, foundational resources to getting those thresholds met, I think the SDGs would be far more successful. And I wonder if anyone has seen that kind of a cross sectoral cross-industry collaboration happen on any SDG. Because for me, it feels like they're just so scattered. And finally, I work on post-project evaluation, and the results occasionally are hopeful, but mostly they're quite dismal. As early as 2 years out, international NGO and bilateral ex posts are down by 20 to 80% from what happened at the end of project. So because we don't design, fund, implement for long-term sustainability, which is just tragic to me. So I love this conversation. Thank you so very much. I look forward to continuing to learn from all of you.
Great. Thank you so very much, Jindra. And may I please let you know that we do have another session happening in 3 hours from now, which is going to be on SDG mapping and interlinkages, because I completely agree with you that SDGs, while yes, you said, put all your might behind one, but you also said about cross-cutting. So I'm going to say that what you're really, saying is perhaps that we should look at the interlinkages among the SDGs and therefore be able to really put, a lot of work into something because it's cross-cutting. So I think, maybe you could look at attending that. And then tomorrow morning, now we will be, it might be a bit too early in the morning for you, but still, I am very, very welcome to join us. Will be a session on monitoring and evaluation of the SDGs. So as you can see, the SDGs are really important. And today's session is really about talking of SDG accountability from a point of view of the actors. What is each of the actors and stakeholders doing, okay, from a point of view of achieving the SDGs, and how are we measuring, or how do we really know that we are contributing, because that's what we want to do. So Behrouz, may I call you in, because you have had a very long career in the corporate world and you have been very responsible for a lot of sustainability reporting and also monitoring and evaluation. So can I lean on you a little bit here to come in and maybe share something, please?
From an experience point of view, to start with, people are very hesitant to kind of, really say it as it is. Everybody wants to kind of have their ifs and buts, that no, but you don't understand business and you can't, that kind of a thing happens. But I think my experience has been in that sense pretty good, because at the end of the day, people realized what we were trying to push for was something good, and that they had to kind of, avoid making excuses as to why people can't do what they're supposed to do. So so we've had this issues. And that was good, though it took but one thing I must say, that we had to show the business case for everything that we were trying to talk about. So again, you were talking about something which one gentleman just now spoke. I can't get his name, when he said that, like, there are negative impacts, and then there are these, everything financially, you have, everything is looked at financially. But that's the reality. So you have to show the business case. I used to cheat on that sometimes and say that, it's in the future, and, like future generations and stuff like that, when you don't have any other answer. But yes, that's a challenge. But the good part is that when people see, and also when people see reason, so somehow people want to see reason, people want to see why we should go through such headaches and do these things when everything is going so well. We are number one in this, and why do we want to, stuff like that. And one of the things I must say which helped was the financial investors who started questioning. I think that was one of the biggest helps. So sometimes I think the guys who are holding the purse strings also have that capacity to kind of come down on you and say, okay, buddy, if you don't do this, I'm going to kind of walk out on you. So these are some practical things that I'm saying from a very sort of from my professional experience, that this is what works. And again, I repeat that still at the end of the day, I think people are logical and intelligent people do understand that yes, this is to be done, and do it. And that is the thing, we saw it at the end of the day, and they have to see it in results also. So then when we got rated under the Carbon Disclosure Project, when we got rated in the World Economic Forums and things like that, people start saying, yes, it was all the headache was worth it. So this is how it took a few years to kind of get people on board and get people on track, but you just have to keep pushing it. And one more thing, it's also the tone at the top. So if the tone at the top is good, is positive, is supportive, then a lot kind of happens that much faster. That's right. I hope.
I just knew when you got started talking, Beros, if you see my chat, I wrote down business case. I just knew you were going to be saying that because, yes, I think I face the same issue when talking with corporates about any kind of measurements. It's always about, oh, is it justified the amount of time and energy we put in it?
Yes.
And then, of course, the cost to some degree, right? And then, like, what's the return on doing this and why do we need to do it? So I think the business case, I think you pointed out two really, really key things that are absolutely critical. One is the business case for it. If we are not able to show that, then the acceptance levels becomes really, really low, and it's very difficult to push it through to make it happen. And I think the second is the tone at the top, as you rightly pointed out, that it has to lead right from the top. I mean, there is no other way to make that culture of knowing that this is a very important part of the business. Yeah. So thank you so much, Beros. I think a lot of experience of yours, and we'd love to use it in some way moving forward as well. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'd like that too.
Great. Absolutely. We'll do that. Yeah. All right. So we are moving ahead quite nicely. We've come to about half our session. So I would want us to start looking at, the capabilities that we have in terms of what are each of you kind of doing. Is there something that we can learn from what you're doing very, very specifically in your would you like to share some of that with us, both from a best practice point of view or simply from a contextual point of view of how certain programs work in some places and how certain programs may or may not work in certain places? So can I have someone who would like to talk a little bit about your work?
All right. So once again, thank you for recognizing me. Talking about my work, most of it is in the international relations and diplomacy niche. I have a lot of diplomatic meetings, generally with the presidents and ambassadors from various nations, and at times we also interact with the businesses, with the entrepreneurs, and with the civil society workers. So I feel that there's a lot of potential, but collaboration is needed. I remember that before the pandemic, I was a part of the business mission of European technocrats and businessmen, and I met this entrepreneur from Czech Republic, and she has this startup known as Spectre Digital. And basically, if you talk about the textile industry, then it is the third largest contributor of climate change. And the printing, the textile printing is a 10-stage process. But what she did was that her startup found a new way, invented a new way to reduce this to 2 to 3 steps, and the printing. It was carbon neutral. So there are a lot of initiatives like this, but what I feel is that more collaboration and more partnership is needed.
Absolutely, partnership is the name of the game. It's the name of the way forward, and we definitely need to look at how we can kind of do that. Yeah, great, thank you. Professor Menon, would you like to say something, please? Because I think you brought in a very important thing in terms of impact investing. So that is, of course, another very key part to ensure that we have more and more, enterprises that are SDG focused. So, yeah, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, actually, I was just thinking that one of the most important issues which we have been facing in the concept of monitoring and evaluation and tracking various social, thematic areas, especially in the context of the SDGs, has been the fact that
we tend to be always looking at quantitative, ways of measurement. But in most of the things, most of the areas where we are talking about, whether it is, zero poverty, or safe drinking water, or water security, or better nutrition, which is food security, and energy security, becomes extremely relevant for vulnerability reduction. Vulnerability reduction, especially in the context of millions of people who are actually being pushed into extreme poverty and deprivation because of COVID-19. Across the world, in 218 countries, we have seen a lot of people who have been pushed into extreme poverty. And when you talk about leave no one behind and do no harm, these have become cliches. We are not actually looking at the marginalized and vulnerable sections, because we are seeing that those are the people who do not have food on the table. They don't have a table. They don't have food, they don't have safe drinking water, they don't have jobs, they don't have opportunities, and they don't have the luxury of working from home. We can sit and do a webinar, but these are the people who have to risk exposure and infection when they go out to earn daily wages. And I think that becomes extremely important. So the business case for benchmarking is essentially trying to look at qualitative aspects where we are able to really touch the lives of millions of people with short, brief interventions which can actually affect the lives of the people. When you look at online education, many of the people could not actually access online education because they did not have laptops, they did not have smartphones, they did not have internet, they did not even have power, or they did not have data plans. So without all these, you will not be able to really do that. We need to really look at the problem and come up with solutions which are innovative. And I mentioned in the chat that it has to be inclusive, it has to be gender sensitive, because women hold half the sky. They hold up the sky. Okay, and the women, they run with the wolves. Okay, and you know the stories. So I think we need to really look at inclusive and gender sensitive participatory solutions to really look at the problems. And one of the suggestions which was brought up just now by Barros, when she said that we need to really look at the way in which all the stakeholder groups can look at one slice of the problem. 17 SDGs are difficult to grapple with, systematically, holistically, but we need to really look at, solutions which are partial, look at a problem and then solve that, and simultaneously allow other people to come up with other slices of the puzzle and then solve that. Thank you.
If I may just add over here, Karen, Mr. Vinod, you're absolutely right when you say that we need to move behind from leave no one behind being a cliche to actual impact. So I would actually love to ask anyone in the audience here if they have examples of very successful inclusion models that they have impacted at a local, national, or international level. I would absolutely love to learn from them.
See, I'm Matthew, speaking on behalf of CYDA, Center for Youth Development Activities. I absolutely agree with, Vinod ji, who said, we need to really look at leave no one behind. See, if we really want to succeed, sustainable development goals, I think we need to look into the bottom 20% of the population who have not get the benefit of development yet. And unless and until we look at their development, we will not be able to achieve. In India, Niti Aayog has identified around 115 districts as aspirational district. If we achieve this, and most of the deprivation and vulnerability we find in this district, especially most of these districts are tribal districts. or a large number of Dalit population is, or remote area in terms of geographical reason. So there has been a special focus to identify this aspirational district and intervention in the area of nutrition, health, education, and livelihood options with a special focus on agriculture. And I'm going to talk about where our intervention is in Nandurbar, which is one of the aspirational district in Maharashtra, where we are especially focusing on the vulnerable community with a special focus on nutrition and health, as well as with a focus on water sanitation and hygiene. And if we can improve, the people who are already deprived, and then we can, look at the indicators, and then, I think we can come closer to the SDG, achieving the SDG goals. We are also especially focusing on the SDG goal 8 and 10, which is also reducing the inequality by promoting entrepreneurship, especially among the women in the rural area and the urban poor area, as well as the tribal area, so that when we empower the women, and their economic empowerment also can reduce the social inequality, and then they can also spend adequate money for education and health. So we need to look into this vulnerability where we need to be focused, and then we can look into the impact we created. I think there should be a special focus to be given to the to reach the unreached population. Then only we'll be able to achieve the SDG goals.
So very true, Matthew. I think, and this is work on the ground, Aparna. I mean, from voices literally from the ground, with hard experience and a lot of impact as well. So it's not just experience and initiative. So I'm sure, Matthew, we will be in touch to learn more, which we can obviously take to WBA and look at how to kind of incorporate those things. Manglama, we will come to you in just a little bit. I know you were trying to talk a little earlier. But Mr. Kumar, I would like him to just go first and then we'll come to you. Yeah, thank you so very much. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I would just like to say one thing. I mean, it all comes down to will. I mean, we all talk about failures of programs. We're very quick to condemn. I can give you a real life example of a huge success. Take the example of Dan Price in Seattle. Look at the wonders that he has created. You can Google Dan Price. I mean, he's the CEO of this organization. It's a online pay channel which he run, an organization which he runs in Seattle. He was drawing a multi-million dollar salary. He took a salary cut and ensured that every single one of his employees gets a minimum salary of $70,000 a year. He took that action unilaterally. Through the depression, through COVID, they have not laid off a single person. There were no salary cuts. This is an example of where there is a will, there is a way. I mean, you can go and see. I mean, when we talk about corporate leaders who show, huge corporate profits every year, how many of them have the will to say, I will put my money where my mouth is. Let me do something for the society. Dan Price is actually going before the council in the state of Washington and saying, increase my taxes. He is advocating a billionaire tax in the state of Washington. I mean, Washington houses Bill Gates, Washington houses several other high net worth individuals. He says 1% additional billionaire tax to be introduced in the state of Washington. And he's fighting with the government authorities to do that. How many leaders in India do we see even talking about this? Forget about implementing it. So as I said, we are hell bent on greenwashing rather than making it succeed.
Great, great.
That's my 2 cents on it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, performance is about real achievements and not simply PR, right? So therefore, what you say makes a lot of sense and is very important for us to kind of understand and also address for sure. Yeah. Shalin, you are one of our allies, and it'll be good to have an ally voice in the conversation. Don't you think so, Aparna?
Absolutely. I just realized that challenge is logged in, so would love to hear his views.
Yeah. What is it?
Hey,
Hey, hi, come, please.
sorry, I was having in classic uh, pandemic nature, I was having Wi-Fi issues, so I missed the past conversation. So if you could just perhaps bring up to speed in terms of what the question is, and I'll try
Yeah.
and
So
contribute.
I think right now we're looking for a good ally voice in the conversation because we've been talking about the benchmarks, we've been talking about using, measure on the ground, right? But a large portion of the group are obviously not aware about World Benchmarking Alliance. And so maybe the use of, and of course, Aparna did mention about Good Business Lab and, the work that you're doing. So it would be really nice to know a little bit more maybe about what you're doing. And as I said, as an ally, how does that really translate? Aparna, am I on track?
Absolutely. Just, Shalan, just for your reference, we did talk about how partnerships are literally the secret sauce to the SDGs. So would love to hear from the partner perspective and how you feel being an ally or partnerships for you personally are driving the whole movement.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I echo that partnerships are the secret sauce to it all because, as WBA have said on at each forum is that these huge challenges around the SDGs can't be solved alone, and you really need partnerships and different perspectives from different geographical locations to really understand the challenge holistically, um, and tackle them. So GBL, so we're a Good Business Lab. We're a not-for-profit labor innovation lab focused on developing scalable solutions backed with rigorous academic research to design worker well-being initiatives which also provide financial returns for firms through improved productivity, retention, and general well-being. So that's what we do at Good Business Lab, and I'm sure as Aparna mentioned, WBA and GBL are currently working together to survey garment workers and understand the gender issues facing progression in the garment manufacturing industry in India. So that's an ongoing project. And we're also part of um, WBA's Alliance and participate in regular calls with different organizations across the world who all contribute to WBA in different capacities, across different industries. So it's really nice as a member to log into these calls and really learn about what's going on across the landscape.
Thank you, Shalan. It's wonderful to hear you say that because one of the things that we really believe in the Alliance is that it's not just a one-way relationship, it's completely two-way. And we really hope to build on the sense of community that, our allies are also allies to each other. So when you kind of join this community, you have access to expertise and partnerships that are literally from local and international perspectives from across the world. So, absolutely an open call to anyone on this panel or anyone who is in our audience today. If you would want to learn more about how you can join the Alliance, please do connect with us.
So Aparna, then it's no longer about a two-way; it's a three-way.
It's a three-way.
Yeah, and actually, Sharon and I have already started a conversation, and hopefully, we will be talking a lot more and explore more, opportunities for collaborations here in India as well. So yeah, absolutely, the community is great, and we definitely look forward to the expertise and the experience and knowledge that comes from there, and we look forward to collaborating with each other as well, with WBA and with the allies. So I would encourage organizations who are here, if you would like to join the WBA Alliance, do chat up a little bit more. You can talk to me, you can talk to Aparna, and we are happy to help that conversation move ahead more. Yeah, great, awesome. So as we move ahead, like I said, we're coming to the end. So maybe now what we're going to move is into the last part, which is about collaboration. So what are the opportunities for collaboration? How do you think we could collaborate, right? So very often people, when you ask this question, find it very broad and they're not able to really pin it down and say, okay, how do I really, really collaborate with somebody else? And so we've tried to kind of, put together 5 ways that you can collaborate with others, and maybe it'll be a way to trigger your thoughts and thinking as to, oh, okay, maybe I can do that, right? Or maybe that's the way I need to think about new partners, because sometimes we just don't think about it so deeply. When was the last time? Yeah, good test point. So when was the last time you thought about, hey, I need to find a new partner to do this with? Anybody who's recently been thinking strongly about partnerships? It'll be a good test to see how you are thinking about partnership and whether it is one of the 5 ways that we talk about. Anybody? No, which means then we really need to talk about partnerships. Huh? Okay. So one of the simplest way to, of course, partner with anybody else is, oh, thank you, Matthew, absolutely correct, is knowledge sharing. I mean, that's the bare minimum that you can very easily do, right? If you have certain knowledge and expertise in a particular area, and if there is somebody else who needs that knowledge and expertise, then you could be very much their mentor. It could be a mentoring relationship, it could be a consulting relationship, it could be advisory relationship. I mean, there are so many ways in which you could share your knowledge. Okay, I have a hand up, and I always like to give that preference over me speaking for sure. So, yeah, Dr. Shabna, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, this is Dr. Shabnam from Project Noor. I work with children with disabilities, and this pandemic has really given us an opportunity to collaborate and partner. So we have had the opportunity of being in, you are so always occupied with your daily routines, but this pandemic has made us an opportunity to stop, give us a chance to collaborate with community based organizations in rural areas, in low middle income countries, not only restricted to India, even otherwise, and share our knowledge experience. So there has been a lot of knowledge sharing, and now we are extending it even further, that we are trying to collaborate and do tele rehab. So we have professionals in the cities whose expertise you are trying to take to the villages and to the rural areas through the use of technology. So I think that's the collaboration partnership out of the pandemic. That's
Excellent, excellent.
my experience.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Shabnam. Absolutely correct. I mean, the starting point is knowledge sharing, but very soon, if that works well, it can definitely grow into something more. And so I think one of the things that the next step that normally we talk about is really replication, you know. So when you share knowledge, you're quite happy with the way something is panning out or the way something is being implemented. You would like to start seeing, you know, maybe implementing that in your own work or vice versa. And so replication of ideas, you know, because you cannot be everywhere, you cannot take your ideas everywhere, you cannot grow so big that sometimes the weight of that expansion could really bring you down. And so it's better to join hands and replicate your programs with others, because that will allow you the ease and simplicity with which your ideas can be replicated without, you know, the phenomenal weight of the operationalization of those ideas. So I think the next step we look at is really about replication. Yeah. The third thing is about joint products, because, you know, the why am I really talking about each, and what I would like is, if you identify with this way of partnering, or you've already done this kind of collaboration, can you please share that? Because, you know, case studies come out of this kind of sharing. There's so much that we can come back to you later on, because obviously, as I said, this is not an event, this is a platform, right? We want the conversation to keep going, and so definitely every single thing you give us will be something more for us to peg on and come back to you with, right? So as I said, the second is about replication, and I'm pretty sure that many of you have heard about other people's work, got in touch with them, and then kind of looked at replicating that idea in your own work. The third step is really about looking at joint projects, right? But joint projects in a way that is very simplistic, in the sense that in a single geography, you may work on different sectors. So, someone who is working on women empowerment, okay, through livelihoods, could also work with the same women on health. So that kind of intersectional programs, okay, which some people talk of it as convergence, and I sometimes feel, convergence makes it sound like as though everything is going to be the same thing. It's not, okay. To my mind, it's more about intersectional, where we understand we have the same, target group that we are working with, or the affected population, as I like to call it. But at the same time, the programs are completely separate, right? So but there's a lot of give and take because it is the same kind of target audience, and therefore the mobilization becomes easier. And I have seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but mobilization for the community also is not an easy task. We think it is, and we feel, oh, they know we are doing a good thing, they know we are coming with a great benefit for them, and so of course they will be very happy to have us. But as Max said earlier, that even when they went into a village, they first prepared them, so obviously if you partner with somebody who's already in that community and working with them, the chances are that your program would be that much more acceptable and that much more easier to implement. So that's a great way to again partner with somebody. And the reverse is very true. That's the fourth level, where you're doing exactly the same what you kind of program, but then you're trying to do it in a larger geography. And so if you have to expand it, how do you do it, right? So that's where we look at saying, okay, can I take the same program but to a different group of beneficiaries, right? So maybe in the same region as well, but to a different group. And this again, like if you take the continuum of women, very often we just make it one big segment and say women. But the truth is that women are girls, women are adolescents, women are senior citizens, women are pregnant and lactating women, women are, widows. There are just so women are disabled. So I mean, with disabilities. So if you look and just say, I work on women issues, I mean that's so broad, right? So that's where you can start new partnerships in that mode, that will allow you to expand your work without, again, as I said, making it too much of an operational issue. And last but not the least, which is what we normally tend to think of most of the time, but which in my opinion is really the most difficult, is to do financial, means joint funded projects, consortium projects, right? I think you have to have some degree of expertise of managing relationships, managing partnerships, managing joint projects, before which you can actually look at a consortium project. And when people evaluate consortium proposals, that is what they really like to see, because it's very easy to put together five CVs of five organizations who can put a proposal for any kind of funding, joint funding. But if you have not worked together, if you do not have the experience of working together, I would put it as high as 8 times out of 10, you will not get that proposal right, because it is simply a proposal put together for funding and not really for operationalizing an idea. So I think these are our 5 ways of the way that we talk about partnership, and we kind of do things. In fact, there's a workshop, I think, tomorrow on partnership models, and I'd encourage you to, of course, look at our agenda and explore what more is there for you to use effectively in your work. So yeah, I think I'm coming to the end of what I had to really share with each one of you about partnerships. And so now I'm waiting to see what is on our chat, and if anybody would like to speak in the meantime, please do join us. Yeah. So many things. Thank you, Jitan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would like to.
please.
May I?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. I had actually put this in the chat a while ago. All the things that you talked about, touched about, I had done in one small case study kind of a thing. I could just quickly put it together and mention it. This was a while ago.
I
I've
must
been
tell
working.
you, Jiju, I'm sorry, I'm just cutting you for a second. No, no, I'm just cutting you for a second. I'm so sorry. Just, but please believe me, giving theoretical advice and seeing it applied is two very different things. So we absolutely love you to say, the work that you've done in real terms on the ground in real. So please go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I have been, as a police officer, I've been working for a long time for women's empowerment as well as poverty alleviation, food security kind of a thing. But I was the CEO of a mining company a while ago when I just got this opportunity. It was this, all our mines were in Bellary. We, all the mine owners, as you know, had helicopters and planes and Mercedes and Audi cars and everything. But then the miners' children did not have anything, not even food or clothing or medical facilities, nothing. So it is not possible for just one officer to just provide for the whole community. And another issue I noticed was that that area I knew had child marriages, and education of the girl child was totally um, um, a non-priority. And for two reasons. One is that they were too poor and they wanted people to start working and getting married. And number two was a very curious thing which came out through some research, some collaborative research through an NGO, that because these girls, because these schools did not have toilets, women, I mean girls after puberty cannot go, because how can they, do things in the fields. So that is another reason, secondary reason. I found out to my horror that this was quite some years ago, 2005. It is, how many years? 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe. So what I had done was, you talked about collaboration, you talked about trust, you talked about taking risks, you talked about bringing the data to the front. All this together, I seem to have done at that time. We just asked the education department about the statistics. We collected all the statistics through another NGO, and I, as a chairman managing director of this government company, put forth this idea that we should start, we should at least have food security for the girl child going to school. Now, Akshay Patra was there in Bangalore, giving distributing food to the schools, but then they were not willing to come outside and set up their kitchens. Fortunately, in Hubli, the Infosys Foundation started setting up a kitchen. They agreed to set up a kitchen, so that was really wonderful. So we also said that, yes, please set up the kitchen. But where is the money now? That is when I just approached 40 mine owners. I mean, it is very unusual for a government officer to just go talk to all the other mine owners. But I thought that we do have meetings. So in one of the collectors meeting, I said that, why don't we all put some money together and set up a kitchen here for the girls, and multiple issues can be cured because of that. And I, of course, mentioned all the things that I had found out. But then they said, who will do it? How can you trust the money? Government was not willing to give the money. But unfortunately for us, one organization, I don't want to mention the names, came forward and put down the bulk and accepted all the data I just placed before them about the conditions of the women, children, condition of the school, everything in toto, and put down 50% of the of the cost. It was a very huge cost. And all the others, we never asked, how much money are you spending? How much money are you giving? Nothing. Trusting that this would ensure food security and also would help towards empowering women of that area and generally enhance the educational status and empowerment of women. We all got together and set up this kitchen. At that time, it was only catering to 20,000 children, but now today it is catering to about 3 lakhs children of that area. So, I mean, I could not, I had to answer a lot of questions from the government, but government also I had certain credibility, and government sort of didn't punish me.
Amazing,
And
amazing,
me,
very
and
amazing.
and that, yeah, the community improved a lot for that
I don't think
because of the
any of us
collaboration.
can claim that we know any police officer who's done something like this. Oh my goodness, this is such an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's such a beautiful story on which to kind of almost end. Almost end, I said, because we do have a few little more things to do. And I do want to give a last chance in case anybody, because we always say that this is about everybody has a voice on a Rise round table. This is not about panels, is not about hierarchy. So, if anybody would like to say a few words before we close finally, I would be very, very happy to give that point. Otherwise, obviously, Aparna, I'll be calling on you to close the call. Yeah. Anybody else here? Okay, last call, and then forever hold your peace.
Karen, can I just mention a few examples of networks? Three networks which I would like to mention.
Okay.
One is the Climate Action Network South Asia with 300 members in 8 South Asian countries and networks of networks. That is one, Climate Action Network South Asia. CANSA, they're doing a program tomorrow with Icebreaker, a roundtable on climate action at 2 o'clock IST, Indian Standard Time. The second network is South Asia Together for Humanitarian Imperatives, SATHI, again SATHI, which is a South Asian network of humanitarian assistance organizations in the 8 South Asian countries. There is another network which is called the Vairo Commission, HUAIROU, Vairo Commission with 50 countries. The members are partner organizations of grassroots women leaders. So there are many such networks. There is LNAP, which is again working in the humanitarian sector based in UK. There is also South Asia Disasters.net, again working in the humanitarian sector. There are many such networks, and we'll be very happy to take this discussion forward and share in some of the chat discussions or in the meetings. Look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Professor Menon. Definitely your knowledge and your connect and networks across the world is absolutely amazing. And I'm glad that you can share that knowledge with us as well. So thank you very much. Great. Yes, thank you, Ashwini. A very, very prompt and on time reminder. So we are starting a LinkedIn group that will be for the Rise World Summit attendees. Because we believe we'd like to continue this conversation. As I said, it's a platform and not an event. And therefore, we'd like to be in touch with you, continue to learn more about the work that you're doing, look at how we can connect with others in this ecosystem and bring more and more of them into this. So look forward to you all connecting with us. Ashwini has put the LinkedIn group details on the chat box. I also would like to encourage you all to please look at the different programs that are there. There are multiple tracks. While there is a continuous stream of roundtables happening, incidentally, right up to 1 o'clock in the night, okay, we also are going to be having multiple workshops, chat tables, and all our innovators, etc. So please do continue checking out the platform. I know in Zoom session we feel like we are somewhere far from the event, but please do go back to the platform and check that out. I think this is and this the third one is what Ashwini has put on the chat one more time, is the survey that we are doing with relationship to the SDGs, so that we understand more and more about what people are doing specifically in that. And so we'd really appreciate your time, and if you could perhaps take that survey. It's a very short one, and but a very valuable one, and so we really would appreciate your assistance in doing that, right? So thank you all very much. That's it from me. I'm going to hand over back to Aparna, and then we will close.
Karan, just one point.
Sure.
See, we talk so much about benchmarks and thresholds, and you know, asking for people to step in, asking for government to give us norms. I mean, one thing which we all can do is listen to our own conscience. We don't need benchmarks. Am I doing right? My conscience will tell me yes or no. My conscience is my biggest benchmark. I don't need to look beyond that. If I mean, and there is that line. I don't know from where it comes, but it was in a poem that I learned long back. To do unto others as you wish others do unto you. If we can follow that, that's our benchmark. That's our threshold. We don't need a government to come in and say this is your benchmark. We don't need the UN or a WBA or any such organization to come and say this is a benchmark. Your own conscience is your benchmark. Follow your conscience, you will never go wrong. And what we are seeing today is more and more people not listening to their conscience. And that's why we are in a mess. So I mean that's
Thank you so much. I would say which panelist is ever going to say something like this on a panel? I mean, you're not going to get this. So this is what you get at the Rise World Summit, and this is what you get at a roundtable where we all have an equal voice and where we can talk in a safe space, not just from a professional practitioner point of view, but also from a very deeply personal point of view. And thank you so much for sharing that, Mr. Kumar. Definitely, I think has touched a lot of people, and I can see them responding on the chat with that as well. So, with that, Aparna, over to you.
Thank you, Karen. I absolutely echo every single thing that was said today. I mean, not to be quoting Spider Man here, but really, I really think with great power comes great responsibility. And like Mr. Kumar said, all of us also have a responsibility to looking inward, and doing the right thing takes effort. But it's something that I learned that so many of us are already doing across the world. And it's been really enriching and endearing to see all the stories that are coming out from a local perspective. For me, I think I take 4 key takeaways, and this is something that I value so much. One was that I learned that getting localized inputs and having an inclusive model is absolutely important. Two, I learned that traditional partnerships are important, but also non-traditional partnerships to ultimately achieve the SDGs. I also noticed that everyone spoke to how there is an awareness gap that needs to be bridged. So I'm hoping that all of us can come together to be able to do that. And lastly, I think going back to the whole inclusive principle, I think it's absolutely essential for the SDGs that all stakeholder groups have a role to play, that it absolutely needs to be a multi-stakeholder voice and cannot be one single voice championing the SDGs all the time, all alone. So this has to be something that has to be done together. From the perspective of WBA, just once again reiterating that we would love to have as many organizations as possible in the alliance. From a local perspective, from an Indian perspective, it would be absolutely valuable for us to have your stories, have your learnings as best practices shared with our community. So I've put my email ID out there, and I'm hoping that our engagement doesn't stop with this roundtable. I'd absolutely love to continue this going forward. And a big thank you to Karen for getting us this opportunity. I think it was superb to be able to take part in the RISE Summit. And thank you, Karen, once again. And thank you to every single member who spoke out today.
Absolutely our pleasure. Thank you very much, Aparna. And thank you, everybody. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully you'll do that at the Rise World Summit. Bye-bye.